Right, finally, I had to do it on my phone, not really working on the thing.
Yay! Excellent.
Morning,
You're
Julian.
here.
Sorry about that.
No
Frustrating.
worries.
It's absolutely
No worries
these
at all.
technology things happen. Yeah, perfect. Good to see you. Okay, I think Emily, have you accepted everybody? I think we have a strong 50. I think we'll make a start just purely for the fact of time.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that we're 5 minutes late. Apologies for the delay, everybody. Some slight technical issues, but we're all in the meeting. Firstly, good morning. Today, we wanted to present a webinar on tackling food waste. And as 2024 closes, we wanted to look at innovation and opportunities for 2025 for the hospitality industry, all about tackling food waste, but understanding sustainability as a whole. Now, I wanted to start this session by introducing myself. My name is Alexander. I'm a lecturer at the University of Essex in the hotel school, teaching future leaders on important issues, and one of them is sustainability. I'm also recently last year I was an accredited consultant for the pledge, and I've worked closely with the likes of Christina, Marco, and Ben, and Julian as well, who are the speakers for today. So without further ado, these are the three main speakers we have. Unfortunately, Ben was meant to join us, but he's currently in Beijing. Firstly, let me introduce you to Marco, who we have today. He's the global manager of the Pledge on Food Waste for hotels and restaurants and canteens. He's a food waste consultant and a professional trainer for the course to become an accredited consultant for the Pledge. And he's also an international speaker and spoken at frequent events in the US, Malaysia, and Mauritius. We have Julien, who has an extensive experience of 25 years in the hospitality events and hotel industry, and his career is mainly on chefing and Michelin stars. He recently, last year, he was accredited from the Pledge and received 94% achievement for St Pancras Hotel in London. And Julian is all about his ethos on creating a better future with regards to sustainability and how produce is treated, including food waste. And lastly, we have Christina. We know each other very, very well. She's the CEO of Open Revenue Consulting, helping increase hotel profits sustainably. And like me, she is also an accredited consultant with the Pledge. Christina was part of the implementation of Marriott hotels across the UK, Ireland, and Scandinavia, and has recently achieved the first gold certified hotel group in Spain. And her experiences, similar to Julian, span over 20 years within the industry. So hopefully you can clearly see that today we're gathered with some huge experiences from industry experts. Now, before Marco discusses about what Pledge is and Julian explains about his experience with implementing food waste practices and the challenges of that, and Christina discusses her experiences within Europe, I wanted to discuss to you today about why we're here. And I put on the slide, sustainability is now not considered a USP. And that's really important to understand as you go on throughout the session. Consumers now believe it's an expectation that hospitals, hospitality, businesses, and all brands conform to sustainable practices. Now, I've put together some data, which I'll show you in the next five slides. And this data is compiled from Mintel. It's a really good research about consumer driving forces and also about their mindsets. If you are interested at the end of the session, please do feel free to let me know. And I'm more than happy to discuss the reports I've found on sustainability as a whole. Now, if you think about the cost of living crisis, I'm conscious that a lot of people have joined this webinar from around the world, but all of us can most likely to relate that prices have risen in all of our products that we buy these days. And that's led to sustainability being more of a concern because as prices rise, customers are looking to save costs. You can see this data specifically from the UK 54% of people now are wanting to reduce their food waste because food prices are rising. In addition, 57% are reducing energy at home. And collectively, the cost of living crisis and inflation has compiled and pushed and propelled the change of sustainability, with 82% of customers now wanting to be more sustainable within their lifestyle. And they believe that that is the future. Now, if you think about sustainability domestically, a quarter of consumers now believe that they are more sustainable than a year ago. And that's important to consider and reflect on. Consumers are wanting to be more sustainable. They're living more sustainable lives. Now, price, of course, in this data shows that it's the main driving force and most likely will be. But 40% of consumers from this data shows that actually, whilst it's important for prices to be kept low and competitive, customers are also wanting brands to be sustainable as well. And that's an important consideration. Now, the three drivers, what consumers are wanting specifically for brands, is one, to be more transparent about their hospitality goals. So how they're reporting, how they're discussing, and how they're showcasing to the consumer what they're doing as a business. Number two is that 54% of customers would actually be more in favor of buying a product if the business discusses what they're doing with regards to their environmental credentials. And lastly, third-party certification is an important consideration for businesses because customers favor that when they see brands where they're third-party certified. Now, it's interesting because consumer data across all industries highlight that our industry is under the spotlight with regards to sustainability. Food and drink as a sector, when customers go and make a purchasing decision, that is more at the forefront of their brand in comparison when they buy some financial services, because they realize that the hospitality industry has a huge impact on the environment. Now, to go into a bit of detail, sustainability is always on the menu. Yes, quality of food, price, how convenient it is always going to be up there. But if you see at the second bottom of the slide, there's a 5% increase from 2023 to 2024 of how environmentally friendly the menu is. And that's been one of the biggest drivers since last year in comparison to the quality of food, how convenient it is. And that just demonstrates why we're here today. Customers are wanting businesses to change. It's now not a USP, it's now an expectation. Lastly, I just wanted to show you that marketing to different types of consumers, all different ages will have different viewpoints on sustainability. Gen Z, we can clearly see now that they are more caring about sustainable credentials, food waste, how businesses bring in food miles to the table. And in addition, all different personas, all different ages will have different perceptions on sustainability. What the general consensus is that regardless of age now, it's now imperative that sustainability is embedded within business operations. As an industry, we create 3.2 billion tons of food wastage. And as a whole, within the UK, 12% of food waste is derived from the hospitality and food industry. Now, there are accreditations becoming more recognised within the UK, B Corps, Drink Sustainability Awards. And on the right-hand side, there are brands and businesses really propelling the change of the future is now. What can we do to improve our sustainable credentials? And that leads on to Marco, who's going to be discussing the pledge on food waste. Myself, Marco, and Christina and Ben, who's not here, we work directly with the likes of Julien on implementing the pledge within Marriott hotels. So last year, Marriott approached the pledge, which is a third-party certification on reducing food waste. And we delivered a 2-day training session in Edinburgh, all about how to change the mindset within the kitchen, within the front of house team, of reducing food waste as much as possible. and it's more of a culture. It's more of a mindset change. And that was a really successful project. All 55 hotels are now implemented, and I know that later on you'll hear from Julian's perspective why it was important, but also the understanding of how to get there. So, Marco, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I will leave it down to you to present.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here with Chef Julian and also Christina and you, Alex, to talk about the pledge and also food waste in general. So I would like to briefly discuss and explain to you what the pledge is and how it works before digging into the experience of the chef who implemented it, and also Christina, who is a consultant for the pledge on food waste. So as you said before, the pledge is a third-party certification on food waste prevention. It was established in 2018, and since then it has expanded in 17 countries, from the UK, China, the US, Spain, Thailand, and others. So the pledge was designed to basically answer two main questions. The first question is, how do we address food waste in F&B? And the second question is, how do we recognize those businesses that actually are sustainable on food waste prevention and have measures to prevent this? So to answer the first question, the pledge was basically designed in order to create a methodology that every business can use, and following those steps, they can address the issue of food waste from basically A to Z, adopting a holistic approach. To do so, basically there are 95 criteria divided into 7 pillars, as you can see here. And what I'm going to do now in the next 5 minutes is to explain to you what are the pillars, and maybe some also example and best practices from the adopters of the pledge. So the first pillar is about process documentation. Here is about formalizing the commitment of the organization by introducing a food waste reduction policy, so to provide the vision of the organization on the topic. The second important document is an action plan. Many businesses don't actually have an action plan, and this is actually fundamental to basically lay out the foundation and to know where to go. The other document is actually the report. So the report is used to tell the story of what has been done and to be shared with other stakeholders. The second pillar is employees' commitment. So here there are mainly two things to address. The first thing is it's not one department job. When we think about food waste, we often think about the kitchen. So it seems like all the responsibility should be on the chef, but actually this is not how it should be, because there are also some measures, practices. There are also other departments, for example, in a hotel, can actually implement and help the organization to achieve the goals. So the other component is actually how we engage with the employees. In the hospitality industry, obviously the employees are the core of the sector. So without them, probably it wouldn't exist. So here, the important thing is to make them understand why the organization is doing so, and also try to engage them. And one way to engage them is through campaigns. So for example, during the lunch at the canteen, some campaigns can be done. One that is pretty popular among the pledge adopters is No Bin Day. So it means that one day every quarter or every month, all the bins are removed and the employees cannot waste food. And actually there were some nice stories that we heard about. At the beginning, employees were hiding food in the pockets instead of throwing away. But then with time, they started to understand and not having food waste. So obviously it's not something that will happen the first day. It's a process, but with the right intention, it can be achieved. The third pillar is about food waste monitoring system. So it's fundamental to know how much food is wasted and where it comes from. Otherwise, it's very difficult to analyze it and take actions. So in order to do this, there are actually many opportunities in the market. Also, Christina will share some insight about one solution. But the pledge basically embrace multiple solutions as long as they follow the criteria of the pledge, which is basically divide the food waste from the customer side, the kitchen side, and also to analyze the data in food waste per cover. Fourth pillar is about food handling before preparation. So reviewing the purchasing, reviewing the receiving part, the storage, and try to minimize the spoilage. Fifth pillar is food preparation and offering. So here is basically try to improve the communication between the service team and the kitchen team. Try to spot maybe what are the dishes that customers throw away the most. If maybe there are some ingredients, some side dish that are not liked by the customers, maybe some garnishes are often discarded. Maybe it's a good idea to remove them. And this can happen just with attention to what is discarded and communicated to the kitchen. Another important thing is about portioning. So it's very important to investigate and address, if the portions that are offered are too much. It's a good way to, maybe a good practice to reduce them. And also if the organization has a buffet, to maybe reduce the plates. And one best practice is not to provide too much food at the same time, but having small containers and refill it more often. So in this way, the customer will also have every time the food available, but in case no one takes the food, not much will be discarded. And then also there are some other criteria, for example, about introducing zero waste dish that help to use those parts that usually are discarded, for example, trimmings, vegetable peels, and also to tell the story with the customers. About the customers, there is the sixth pillar, which is about customer engagement. So here is not finger pointing, it's not to blame the customers if they waste food, but actually having a proactive attitude and engage with them. This can be done by asking them some questions, by having some nudging techniques and communication on the buffet line, for example, or in the menu. I saw some good example of some menus in some hotels that they talk about food waste and why food waste is an issue. So unfortunately, as of now, many customers really ignore the reason why food waste is a problem, especially for the environmental part. And by reading this can also help them to understand why they shouldn't waste much food. And another way to engage customer is maybe not doing during the lunch or the dinner, but in a case of a hotel, for example, some nice stories where the chefs and the kitchen teams go into the lobby with some zero waste snacks and try to talk with them in another moment where it doesn't feel intrusive because it's not during the lunch or the meal, and to discuss with them what they think about food waste, what they think about their practices they have introduced. And this really can walk the talk about food waste in hospitality. And the last pillar here is to close the circle and ensuring circularity is what do we do with the excess food or actually the food waste. So excess food can actually be donated or sold at a discounted price. And we know some apps, for example, that can be used nowadays. And then the food waste can be composted or can be also upcycled. For example, there are some nice stories of some chefs that they took the food waste and created paper or created even plates. Some others, they created soap, for example, with citrus peel, and then placed the soap into the rooms of the hotel. And also this can tell the story to the customer about sustainability. So this is the first part about how do we tackle food waste in F&B. And the second part about how do we recognize those businesses is about the third-party audit of the pledge. So the organizations will need to use a platform that the pledge provides that basically contain all the 95 criteria that contain guidance and also some tools available in 3 different languages, English, French, and Spanish. And they will need to basically prove that they have the criteria in place. Then they will ask for an audit. The audit is third party. We collaborate with some partners. Some are smaller organizations, some other international organizations like SGS, and they will check the compliance of the criteria. So there will be a review on the platform, and then there is a meeting with executives and also an inspection in the restaurant to basically verify the compliance with the 95 criteria of the pledge. If 78 criteria out of 95 are compliant, the organization will get certified the pledge. If there are also more criteria, which are bonus, that are compliant, the organization will receive a score between 70 to 100, and there are 4 different possible outcomes. The first one is bronze, between 70 and 79, silver, between 80 and 89, gold, between 90 and 99, and then eventually all-star, if 100%. The organization will also receive a pledge box with a certificate, a plaque, and some goodies, so they can use it to showcase the outcome and the result. And here you can see some things, some practices that can be used on site, but also online or in other media. And just to conclude about actually what Alex already shared, one big project recently with Marriott International in the UK, Ireland, and Iceland. Basically, 55 hotels implemented the pledge, and they achieved actually the certification. 53, they got gold, 2, they got silver, and eventually the percentage of reduction in food waste per cover was 25% if we make an average of all of them. And to me, the very good thing is that more than 1,000 of people were trained on food waste prevention. And if you consider just a few years ago, how food waste was actually, I would say, approached in the industry, this is a great achievement, and hopefully this will continue even more. And I don't want to take too much time because I think it would be great also to hear from Julian and Christina. And this was about the pledge.
Thanks, Marco. I think it's good to move on to Julian now, because Julian has had experience with implementing pledge, and it's all well and good hearing about, in theory, how it's implemented, but actually in practice, what were the challenges? So Julian, do you mind just enlightening the audience of kind of your journey of hearing about pledge to then becoming gold certified? What did that journey look like to you?
So the first 3 days was really to actually understand the pledge and to be accredited, which in a sense is helping us to work with the pledge platform. Those trainings we have done for 3 days have been very priceless in a way that we can really understand the platform. And I think it's, as a start, it is very important. It can be, when you start and listening to Marco, you sounds like, wow, it is a lot. And it could be quite scary, and you wonder how much time I'm going to spend doing it. And actually, it's not that time consuming. It does take time to walk around and make the changes necessary, which those changes are, for any business and the future of the planet, very important. Sometimes when you are in the hotel, you don't understand, you just run, and you don't really see the details. The pledge platform helps you to take those details and, remind you that need to be done. And I think little hints like this is very important.
Yeah.
Now, the platform is very easy to use. There's a lot of guidance in there. It doesn't take that long. Once you understand after those 3 days of training, it actually is not long at all to do it and to get into the groove of things. And within 6 months, we went from the training to get accredited. So it doesn't require too much time, really. It's just to focus your directions, and the details need to be done.
Yeah. Let me just give an overview to all of the participants of how Marriott decided to implement pledge. So they signed the contract with pledge. They then invited the GMs and the exec chefs like Julian to Edinburgh. Myself, Christina, Marco, and Ben. We then delivered a 2-day session on what is pledge, the reasoning for it, why food waste is an issue, how much it can save your business. And then what led that pathway was Julian would then go back to his property, explain what the pledge is, and then implement it from a local basis. So it was kind of a centralized strategy locally. My question to you, Julian, to kick things off is, what was your biggest challenge? So, of course, you went through the training of the compliance platform, the seven pillars, the understanding of bronze, silver, gold. What was the feedback from your teams, and how did you educate your teams on it?
So the hotel I was working at 280 staff, and I think the food waste is became more and more important, and that's a culture change. That is what was required. I find this part the most challenging.
Yeah.
The actual pledge and the action, I think everybody understood because the direction is very clear what
Mhm.
needs to be done and the helps for the business and how you can achieve this. But it's something the entire hotel, as Marco said, this is not just a chef point of view, this is a culture change. And that goes from housekeeping to maintenance to all of the level of the hotel to understand the reason behind it. The canteen was the hardest part for some reason, where people take food and they end up in a bin. That was my worst bin in the entire hotel, was a canteen.
Yeah.
And it was a communication, it was a meeting as the hotel. We do a staff meetings every month, and that was really part of my communication to everyone at the hotel and make them understand the reason behind it. Because there is, of course, waste is linked to a cost for the hotel, which every business actually need to understand that. But for me, I see it a little bit more than that in terms of there are people in the world who do not have the luxury of having a decent meal in front of them. And I think it's also part, from in my eyes, part of the pledge is kind of like, let's do our bit to
Mm.
protect the local people as well, the community, because it's not only the money we waste, it's everything. Food, the planet is getting bigger and bigger, and we need to do something and act on the future. And the pledge is really helping us to get that communication within your businesses, and it helps a lot to move things forward and to be a better world citizen. If you want, if you understand the word, it's like
Yeah.
my main motto is there is no planet B. Like you got a planet A, there's no planet B, and that's very important. We look after what we got,
Mhm.
and by looking after what we got is also looking after the community and being able to use our overproduction, because I don't want you to call as a waste, to deliver to the local community, to the homeless people, to the shelters around the businesses is also a really good part of the pledge. And it kind of help us to do this.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's interesting that pledge focus on seven pillars, all about the process documentation, all the way to food storage, how you monitor food waste. Pillar five was an interesting one when we delivered the training, because that got the chefs most excited about trying to find dishes that had zero food waste in them. Was there an example in your menu items that you looked at, analyzed, and reviewed, and then thought to yourself, actually, this is the dish we can kind of create on our menu that has very little or if not zero food waste at all?
Yeah, the I had three head chefs in the property. The three of them were very, very good. Particularly one of the restaurant outlets was very active on that. And I've been very grateful to have him on board because he understands the whole concept of using everything from what you are buying. So if you're gonna get a cauliflower, the entire cauliflower, including the leaves, will be used.
Mhm.
The fish will be used, filleted. The bones will be used as a stock. And of course, there are some parts where the fish bones cannot be used after the stock's been made, but we maximize the production of the actual ingredients. Veg-wise, we were buying what was in season, so the quality was better.
Yeah.
And we started to kind of find alternative. For example, when you have peelings of potatoes, we're starting to make chips out of them. So the transformation is like, how do you transform a product with adding kind of a value to it as well?
Yeah.
So that was very active on that. He was very, very active. And he created some amazing dish you wouldn't know used entire things. Like for a carrot, for example, we use the entire carrots from the peeling who goes for a veg stock to the greens of the bunch who goes for pesto and then the carrot itself. So everything, every part of the items were used.
Sure.
And it's very good. You know, it creates a little bit of a competition within the chefs to come with little ideas like this. And that was great to see.
Yeah, one of the things when we were delivering the training session is that all of the GMs and exec chefs left the training saying, "How do we get to gold? How do we get to all star?" Which was really pleasing to see. There's probably people on this call thinking, okay, food waste is an issue in our property or in our hotel or restaurant. What advice, if they were to implement pledge, Julian, would you give to the participants? Because there may be people being on this webinar right now, not even knowing what pledge is. And to be honest with you, a year ago, before becoming a consultant for Pledge, I didn't know anything about it. And yes, Marriott have implemented it and it's just growing in the UK. But if I was to implement Pledge, what would you recommend? What would be your biggest advice to the participants?
That would be to get the team on board of it.
Yeah.
And I think make this culture change of make everybody who works in your hotel or restaurant or property to understand what is food waste. And the pledge, it's a structure, it's a platform, it's a support, it's everything to guide the hotel or the restaurant. But it has to start with the entire employees, the entire team.
Yeah.
With this, everything is actually very easy to implement. The pledge is so well done. It's so easy to go around it, to upload, to tick the boxes. There is so much support.
Mhm.
So this part, which sounds scary, it actually is not. The most things is to have the entire team with you on board. And I think more and more people are seeing this. I've been a consultant for the last 2 weeks now, and I had a lot of people who's actually credential before they actually book the restaurants about sustainability, about recycling, about what are you doing with food waste. And that wasn't there 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's getting more and more. And particularly those people were bank who are actually asking for those certification.
Yeah.
And the pledge tick so many of those boxes because it tackle all those pillars. I think it's a very well-rounded product to help support your businesses and to be able to say to anybody who wants to come and work or come to stay or eat in your operation. It's a fantastic structure. But
Yeah.
the whole team needs to do it. The whole team needs to understand what is food waste.
Yeah. I think
นั่น
I
มัน
think
ใช้
that's a
อัน
really
นี้
important
ใช้ไม้
message.
ที
Um,
เรียบร้อย
um,
ใช่ไหมพี่จะเป็นอย่างนี้หรือเปล่า
sorry. I'm conscious that the
ต้อง
employees
เปิดรูปผมไหมเนี่ย
um, was includes general managers, all of the front of house team, the marketing, the HR. How much time did it take you from implementing Pledge? What was the resources needed for you to successfully get gold and your property from being certified in June last year?
Not a lot at all because everybody do their part. We had this meeting once a week where all the food committees, so people who are actually kind of like driving the food, but not only the in terms of what we sell, but what we use, what we do with our food, and all the information were passed on to me, and I was just filling up the platform. So if it takes an hour of your time a week for all the departments, I would think that would be the maximum required.
Yeah,
So, in terms of timing, it's actually very straightforward as long as, again, it's a teamwork. This is not just one person.
Yeah, that's an important consideration. And I think it goes back to your earlier point that sustainability is now not a USP. It's a consideration that every business should acknowledge, that customers are not going to go to your business now because you have pledge, but they expect it. Christina, I'd love to bring you into the conversation. You have huge experience of pledge and your overall experience in sustainability. What's your viewpoint on pledge, and can you just share to the audience about your experience with that?
Well, good afternoon. Well, good morning still, actually, and good evening for everyone in Asia watching us as well. Lovely to be here. Thanks very much, Team The Pledge and Alex and the University of Essex for inviting me. Thank you also, Julian, for really bringing people zooming into what you've been doing. It's incredible work, and many congrats. For me, it's also been really a privilege to be able to be part of this program and be able to bring it to different geographies. So apart from the UK, where we do quite a few projects, we've actually managed to bring it to Spain, and Spain has been it's been rewarding because there's so much potential in Spain and so many resources that really need help tackling food waste. And for us, the pledge has been just a perfect sort of approach that helped us manage this project, because effectively it controls and helps us guide us through the entire journey of the food. You know, from forecasting revenue effectively and how we purchase that food, through to receive that food, how we distribute it, how we store it correctly and in the best conditions, and then moving into the preparation and to how we feed the buffet, how we organize the mise en place, and effectively the customer plate. And even after the customer effect, it helps us craft very specific initiatives where we think creatively of how can we divert food from getting into the landfill, which is the problem, because that's when it sort of decomposes and generates all this greenhouse gas emissions that accelerates this climate change. So it even helped us identify how can we work with the community to really redistribute any excess food. So here there's lots of things that can be done. Working with charitable organizations and food banks is a very good place to start. But when talking about post-consumer, you could even think of how can we actually transform food once we're no longer able to be rescuing that food and actually turns into waste. How can we transform it into byproducts, repurposing it, whether it's energy, producing biomethane gas, or electricity, green electricity, or compost or fertilizer, whichever that is. So that's kind of a very holistic approach to how we look at food and how we look at food waste to avoid that food waste. If we think about the very key milestones, and Julian couldn't dwell more upon it, how important is the enablement of the teams, that awareness driving, that training across teams to build that culture of sustainability, and for them to understand that we need to create an emotional connection between food and the person that is there managing it and looking after it day in and out. And there's a very fundamental aspect about collaboration, and there's also a fundamental aspect about technology and how we're able to really keep good control and understand at every point in time what we are using and what we are eventually wasting. Overall, I would say the methodology and the capabilities that are embedded into the pledge help us constantly in making sure we prevent and we reduce that food waste, but also we improve the guest dining experiences. And we look at what clients actually enjoy eating, and we provide more of those, and we sort of contextualize and personalize that experience to them. And I think, that nudging technique that Marco was talking about, how do we communicate with the customer, becomes really fundamental, and make them think beyond our sort of very, very linear economic model that we have. a more circular model overall. And I think we have somebody that's trying to speak to us here, but we would like everybody to please stay on mute just to make sure we can all hear each other, and we'll be delighted to give you an opportunity to speak as well. And maybe just highlight a couple of things from more practical things of what we have done in some of our projects. And if I go back to one that's particularly dear to my heart, because it's in Spain, it's the first one that actually got recognized for the great efforts that they have conducted over the past more than a year now, which is the Magic Costa Blanca group. They managed over 22 properties in the Costa Blanca area of Spain, and we started the actual project in one of their largest sort of operation called Magic Crystal Park, which is an all year round operation, because we have a lot of seasonality in Spain, of course. So a lot of hotels are thinking, but how will I be able to do this when I'm open for these 4 or 5 months in the year and then the rest? And it's pretty much the same approach that we would adopt. But this property has 453 bedrooms, and we're talking about daily cover from 2,500 when we're out of season through to more than 4,000 covers a day. And when we started measuring food waste, we identified that the benchmark, effectively, the amount of food waste that was produced a day, which is about over 350 kilograms of food. And so that milestone of understanding the benchmark or creating that baseline was where we started the whole process. But previous to recording a baseline, we actually had to go through some those important steps to get us on board, which is getting everybody aware. So building that awareness training with a team. We've trained over 60 members, particularly within that hotel, and about the impact of food into our business, into the bigger sustainability picture. And then we, at that point, once everybody was on board, and we actually were able to train them also on the technology side of things, because having a food waste monitoring technology is really where it all starts to drive that visibility as to the areas that we really need to tackle. Julian mentioned about this committee, this food committee. We love to call it the Food Lovers Committee. It's a really, really important step for every single businesses, because it requires that a representative of every single department is involved. So it's an organizational structure that effectively helps us communicate our message and manage this whole process consistently, and build that sense of community and commitment across teams. And then the ability to really identify where the problems were and where the quick wins were, and really come up with specific solutions, creative solutions to address them, goes back again to the technology piece. And in the case of Julian, very, very good technology was put in place. In Spain, we used Food Intel Tech, which is a very, very simple and incredibly effective solution to understand where food waste is actually happening in a very clear manner, without too much interaction from the staff. And I think at the end of the day, to have quality data, we really need to make sure that the data is clean. And so there's very specific questions that we need to respond to be able to understand how we manage food waste today. Where is that food waste actually happening, whether it's in the main restaurant, whether it's a canteen, and what time of the day. So we're tracking from the first service, whether it's breakfast, whether it's lunch, whether it's dinner, throughout the entire day. We are monitoring, and everybody that touches food is responsible to track what goes on with that food. And then it's important to know why food waste is being produced. So we categorize it into 4 different categories, whether it's spoilage, because something's gone bad and it's got past expiration date, or whether we are generating waste like peels and trimmings of all sorts in the kitchen during the preparation stage. But also if we are clearing the buffet and maybe there's foods that haven't been consumed fully and we can't repurpose them and we have to put them in the bin. And finally is the customer plate. The customer plate, it's what we call the mixed plate, because ultimately is where everything sort of comes together. We're not going to sit and dissect every single ingredient there. But as long as we are able to understand also what is being wasted, so whether it's fruits, whether it's vegetables, meat, dairy, seafood, or staple foods like bread and rices and pastas, etc., we just then need to monitor how much. So it's these 5 questions that we need answers to on a regular basis that enable us to really understand what goes on and what are the sort of actions that we can actually take in place to identify areas of improvement. And particularly in this case of this pilot project that we did that's now being rolling out, we saved 46% of food waste over the course of 1 year, and that means in a very granular way is the food waste per cover that we're particularly caring about. So that's just very quickly a quick overview for you, Alex, and the team and everyone else watching us, but happy to provide any further insight that you think that might be relevant.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. You do some incredible work with Pledge and with your company. And as an accredited consultant, I know that you support the hotel when they're deciding how to implement Pledge and kind of supporting them along their journey. I'm conscious that we only have 10 minutes or so remaining, and there are some really good questions from the audience. I'm going to ask Marco this question from H. Wenzel, and it's all about the return of investment, which I presume is on everybody's mindset of, if I decide to implement Pledge, one, Marco, how much is it going to cost me? But in relation to the return of investment, how much is it going to take?
Yes. Well, actually, so I think that is the okay. So about the cost in implementing the pledge, well, actually the fees are simply 85 USD per month that are billed annually, and then there is the audit fee that is paid to the third-party company. Then there are consulting services and trainings that obviously can be taken, and this it depends on our consultants that can provide the service, and then obviously this can be integrated with other system like technology. But I would say if a restaurant implements a solution like the pledge and it starts from nothing, I would say the ROI is going to be in 2 or 3 months. If they follow, I would say, the implementation in the right way and they are very committed, then I would say it's very quickly. This is what we saw in the majority of the customers. Then it would be nice to hear Julian and Christine as well. But I would say it's very immediate to see results with food waste.
Yeah, I agree on that. The reward is it comes pretty much on the first week without you realizing it, because you are more into a focus on doing the pledge. You pay attention to the details, and the details are where the money is wasted. So by doing the few tricks required by the pledge, you will notice a reduction of your waste pretty much immediately. All the tools, like Christina said, about where your food waste come from, actually help you to either reduce your plates from the customer, because you notice it's the same items, you come back and that people say it's too much, it's too big, so you reduce your portion, so it helps already on that point. Or other things, kind of like the spoilage, the food waste from the canteen, you can really track everything accurately immediately, and therefore that is a reward to come back pretty much on the first week you start the pledge system and starting to track everything.
Amazing. Thanks, Julian. I have another question from Alexandra, which is about how does the Pledges benchmarking tool work? And how can a property compare themselves to others? Well, in terms of Marriott's case, Julian, feel free to jump in at this. They obviously had 55 properties that all wanted to implement Pledge at the same time. And I remember vividly leaving the training after 2 days and GMs coming to me saying, how do we get to gold? How do we get to All-Star? Essentially, there's 95 criterias that each property has to meet. The 78 are the 78 points, which are completely compulsory. So if you don't get those 78 points, then of course you don't become pledge certified. What Marco spoke about with the bonus criteria, that's how you distinguish yourself from bronze, silver, gold, and all-star. From Marriott's perspective, 53 of their properties became gold with 2 silver. So in terms of benchmarking, properties can look at each other's scores from the audit of one got 80%, one got 92%, and then it allows further benchmarking in the future because each year the audit happens, you can lose your stars and gain percentage points as well. So hopefully that answers your question, like Alexandra, of the benchmarking. How can you compete against other teams and other properties? The main thing is bronze, silver, gold, and hopefully with 100% with All-Star. Julian, was it quite competitive when you were competing against other properties within your brand?
Yeah, very, very, very much. Yes.
Yeah.
We all wanted all stars. I think to be honest, all stars will come in a year 2. On year 1, if you go a gold star, I think it's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Marriott launched the initiative November last year in 2023. By June 24 this year, all of their properties were certified, with most of them coming out gold. So I think that just goes to show in the future, properties will most likely be looking at how do we get to All-Star this year, with the validation that when the audit comes around, they could lose and go back to silver and bronze, and obviously they don't want that. I have a question which talks about...
Alex,
Yes, Christina.
I was just going to add one more element to the benchmark for Alexander's benefit. So depending on how many properties you eventually onboard for this project, if you have multiple properties and you use a food waste technology or food waste monitoring system, you'll be able to see every single one of your kitchens. So you can easily compare one kitchen against other kitchen within the property for benchmarking purpose, but also the other properties within the group that you might want to be able to benchmark. And then you can also benchmark specific ingredients against across all these various kitchens, the service, whether it's, the breakfast, lunch, dinner. So you can go into quite a lot of granularity if we want to look at the benchmark. And when I use the term benchmark, what I meant to say is your start line, you would call it the baseline, when you actually start monitoring your food waste without changing anything in the business for approximately 7 or 14 days or more, depending on, until we identify actual patterns. That is your red line. That's basically where you're top today. And what we really strive for is make sure we go below that red line and we constantly reduce that waste that's actually being generated. So that's another way of looking at the benchmark. Sorry for that, Alex. Thank you.
No problem, Christina. No problem. I'm very conscious of time, but Supercron has a question. Mark, I'm going to hopefully you can answer this one. It looks at how does the pledge help reduce other elements of wastage as well, such as cooking oil, paper, plastic wrap, or is pledge focused mainly on food waste?
Yeah, no, this is something that is very important too. Obviously, there is not just food waste, but the kitchen produce other types of waste. But yes, for the pledge, the focus is only about food waste.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Philippos, which is how AI can measure the food waste from customer plates. From the case study of Marriott, as well as implementing Pledge, they implemented WinNow, which is a food waste monitoring system, which looks at which has a camera above the bin, which measures the food. what type of items are going in at what time. But in addition, there are other food waste technology systems. Christina has worked with FIT, which is food intel technology, which Ben, who was meant to be here today, he's the CEO of that food waste monitoring system. I think as AI becomes more and more embedded in our society, that it will shape our future of how we can monitor it and how managers can understand and track from real time the type of food that's constantly being wasted and how that can benefit the learnings of future direction. Hopefully that answers your question. Now, we have 1 minute until the end of the webinar. Yes.
Yes, before we finish, I would like to make sure that all the participants know about you actually have some perks because you attended this webinar. So let me quickly share with you. So there is an online course on food waste prevention done by Light Blue Consulting, our partner with the pledge, that basically cover many aspects from farm to fork, and then zoom in the food waste issue in F&B. So if you attended the webinar, you will receive 30% discount to use by the end of the year. And if you are a student from Edge Hospitality School, you will actually receive 50%. So I would say this is a great opportunity if you want to dig more into the topic. And then for who actually run a business in F&B, for the pledge, because you attended the webinar, you will receive 20% discount on the membership fee until the end of January next year. So you can just contact the pledge and mention that you joined the webinar and you will receive the discount. So I wanted to just take those minutes to let the attendees know.
Amazing. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, everybody who's joined the session. Christina, Julian, Marco, thank you very much for sharing your insight. Hopefully all of you have learned that specifically in the UK, sustainability is growing, but specifically food waste, consumers are seeing it as imperative, not as a USP from a brand perspective. And there are elements now that businesses can adopt, such as pledge, such as food waste monitoring systems, to really improve their sustainable credentials. If you are interested and want to find out more, of course, you'll receive an email at the end of the session to contact either Marco or Christina or myself or Julian. And hopefully the future is bright, and happy Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to be
Thank you so
here.
Have a good day.
See you soon.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.